The reality is, though, that the people most affected by this issue, those with the most to gain or to lose, are the young people standing on the cusp of adulthood, about to join the workforce, and simply imagining what their lives may be. Well, it's with that in mind that we've invited young people from all around the world to pose questions to the three leaders who are just about to join me on stage. So please join me in welcoming World Bank Group President Ajay Banga, the former Chilean President Michelle Bachelet, and President Tharman Shanmugaratnam of Singapore. Welcome, everybody. I hope you're prepared for some really difficult questions, because that's what we're asking for. So if you're watching online and you want to ask a particularly tough question, get them in now, because there is still time. First question, I'm looking for a difficult question from the studio audience, please. Does somebody have a question for us? Oh, gentleman there, 6th row, I can see you. Please, make it tough. No pressure.
My name is Marco, I'm French and Nigerian, and I had a question for Ajay. Ajay, you've been at the bank for 2 years now. As you reflect on your tenure, can you tell us something that you found easier than expected and something that you found harder than expected? And when you look to the future, what gives you confidence that the bank is well positioned to tackle this jobs agenda? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Julia.
He's being a little ageist about the bank there with the 80 years old. But
So what surprised me on the positive side is the depth and width of the kind of people in the bank. Because when you want to learn about drinking water, for example, while you can learn a lot from Singapore, which is where we've set up a knowledge bank on water, the reality is here in the bank, you can call for people, and in an hour, you will have a conversation that educates you about a topic on which you may have known very little, but at the end of the hour, you will be knowing enough to be dangerous in a conversation. That quality of person who is not just an academic expert, but has also had the chance to live and work in different countries around the world, that's a pretty rare asset and not something I completely understood before I joined. The part that's very difficult is to get all this to work together in a way that you can unlock the multiplier effect or the synergy caused by the different parts of the World Bank Group operating as one well-oiled machine. We have the public side of our bank, we have the private side of our bank. In the private side, we have a capital side, we have a guarantee side, and we have a settlement of investment dispute side. Over time, these have grown in ways that have created silos between them. As any of you who work in an organization, you know that silos come with human nature. Our attempt to break that silo down, the private sector lab is a way to break that silo down. The Jobs Council is a way to break the silo down by using outside-in input. That's hard. It's not easy, but it's progress that we're making. And so why do I feel confident about being able to do something about jobs? Because this is the time to bring the different resources we have together to make those jobs possibilities come through. We have the ability to provide the public side of what's required, the enabling infrastructure, with our public side of the bank, IBRD and IDA. We have the ability, through our knowledge bank, to provide help on regulatory policy, from land reform to labor reform to mobile collateral laws to bankruptcy laws. And we have the private sector part of our bank, IFC, MIGA, and ICSID, the settlement of investment disputes. When you bring those together, very few organizations have the ability to do this the way we have in one place in-house. And so that's where my confidence and my ambition comes from.
So dangerous in a good way is how you described it.
Always a good way.
Always a good way. Okay, we're going to go to our next question now, and I believe it's online, and it's for President Bachelet. Sophia from Moldova, thank you so much for your question. I'll read it out. Despite progress, women still face barriers to economic opportunities. What bold actions do you believe are most urgently needed to close the gender gap in the labour market? President Bachelet.
Well, thank you, Julia. I always receive questions on women issues. I can imagine why.
Don't worry, we're not going to be sexist. Someone else is going to answer as well.
But also because it's one of my
It's also
concerns
personal.
throughout
Yeah.
my life.
Yeah.
And I do believe that is completely true. And even though women have more access to work, usually they are the ones that, hitting, if there's an economic crisis, for example, a pandemic or an economic crisis, women are the first who lost the jobs and are the last who recover it. Also, they have the more precarious jobs, and many are in the informal work, and of course, their salaries are less than men. And many have law discrimination bylaws. So it's urgent because we know that women are half of the population. So we don't give women all the opportunities to thrive, well, we're losing half of the potential of the world to thrive. So we need to act bold and urgently. What things I think can be done? The first is we need to acknowledge and give attention of the unpaid care work that women do all over the world. And that it seems like, and it's so important, which society can live without care? Think on children, elder people, or these people living with disabilities, or people with diseases, are women usually in the whole world who take care of them. And it's so important, but we treat it as it is invisible. Nobody thinks on that, and it's free of pay. In my country, the central bank, and I'm saying that because it's not the Ministry of Women, it's the central bank who did a study and calculated which was the importance of the unpaid care work. If you look at it and you calculate it as part of the GDP, expanded GDP, it was 25.6%. While my mining sector was 14.8%. And of course, if you think of mining sector contributing to other industries, it came to 20%. But the other ones was 25.6%.
But it's a quarter of the economy that's simply not accounted for.
It's not accounted for.
So important.
And if you have women taking care of everyone and not having a support, women cannot work, cannot earn money, cannot bring income to their families. So governments should pay attention to that and should work to think on childcare facilities, or care facilities for people living with disabilities. In my country, we have done it. We have worked with municipalities, creating all these centers. Of course, not enough yet, because it's pretty costly, but I think it will be very important. And also because you need only to professionalize them, to know exactly what you have to do, how to care in well conditions for people, but also taking care of their mental health, because it's very difficult to be with the children who is a disabled children all the time at home, and it's very difficult. So we need to take care. So one thing is acknowledge the unpaid care and look solutions for that. Second, I think it's very important to think on how we ensure that women have same salary for the same work. This is something that doesn't happen in the world. I'm not talking, I don't know in the World Bank, but in the world, it's not happening. And the people, when I was my first time candidate, one of my campaign slogan was, should I receive a less salary than a man president? No. Why should women with the same work should receive less salary? And we need to work on that. And government needs to, and the private sector needs to supervise that, see how it works, have the laws that ensure that, because in many places you have the law, but it's not implemented, because nobody's looking after that. The third thing I think it will be very important, visibility. And in that sense, it's really important you have more women on boards, on the companies.
Yes.
Private and public sector. While I was president, I started with the state companies, because that was what I could really decide, and then give the example for many others. So that was really important, because we have seen when women are in boards, those companies have very good performance. And we saw it during the economic crisis also. So I think many of these things can be done and should be done. And I think that everybody will win and will be in better conditions. And of course, we know when a woman has an income, she dedicates 80% of the income to the family, education, health, etc. So if that happens, everybody wins. The society wins, the world wins, and men also wins because women are more happy. So everybody wins.
Nice. I'm going to very naughtily go rogue now. Spend one more minute on this for gender equality and for balance. Who would like to weigh in for 1 minute on their views on this? RJ or President Tharman? He's pretending to ignore me. RJ, it's you.
No. I've known him a long time, and he's a champion for this. So
I just 1 minute, if you would like to weigh in on this subject.
Let's put it this way. I mean, I think Michelle has given us an extremely articulate
Yes.
Case for women, for humanity, and for economies. The fact is, the underutilization of women's talents and capabilities and the undertraining of women, starting from a very young age, is the largest potential loss of economic growth that the world has today. Much of it is in the developing world, but I would say there are also problems in the advanced countries. But that is the largest potential loss of incomes and growth that we have today. So Michelle's final point, men also benefit, not just because women are happy, etc. But
appropriate.
Everyone just ends up better off.
Yeah.
We are growing the pie.
President Bachelet also asked how you're doing at the World Bank. Will I be told off for asking that question? I've not got the data to hand.
No, we're actually, people here have been studying the idea of, and looking at our own compensation, basically, of women to men, equal pay for equal work. I think that's a really important thing. I saw this in my prior private sector life as well. It is not easy to do it. The challenges are plenty, but doing it is the most important thing you can do to change the culture of an organization. To go from saying that you have to do something to advantage people to saying you don't need to do anything, it's just the way it should be. Getting this right, the fact that it's just the way it should be, is kind of an important aspect of what Michelle is saying.
It's just the way it should be. Okay, let's move on and get another question. This time, President Tharman, it's for you. And it's online again. Henry from Kenya, thank you so much for submitting your question. Oh, and it just disappeared. So good news, I've got a backup here. Oh, no, it's back. Fantastic. I'm going to trust my paper. We live in a world where the intelligence age is booming. Automation is rising, alliances are shifting, and the economic order is changing, and then some. How should countries think about job creation amid such uncertainty? That's a tough one.
Okay, so we live in a world where we're all talking about who's taking my slice of the pie. And how can I get back a slice that I believe is mine?
Or the whole cake.
Or the whole cake. And if that's the only game in town, there's a way in which the pie gets a little smaller over time. So let's take a step back. Our largest problem is that starting from the global financial crisis, through the 2010s, and even more so in the 2020s, the pie has been growing very slowly. And it's sort of natural that when the pie grows slowly, that the arguments get a little sharper as to who's taking a larger slice of the pie. Our challenge and our ambition has to be to grow the pie. Our challenge and ambition has to be to grow the global middle class. And we can. In fact, we have the prospect of growing the global middle class by 1 billion people in the next 5 years. And the answer for that is largely in the developing world. And it's not just a rhetorical goal, It's a very real possibility. We've got 600 million young people entering the workforce in the next 5 years, 800 million in the next, until 2035. But in the next 5 years, 600 million young people, better trained than their predecessors were. We have people who are already in the workforce, eking out a living, or in the lower middle income group, who are desperate to become middle income. But there's a very real possibility now of adding 1 billion people to the global middle class. Imagine what that does to the global consumption pie. It grows the pie for everyone. And we can achieve it, which is what we've been talking about on this council and what the World Bank is now obsessed with. How do we grow the pie? How do we grow jobs? Allow people to get on a ladder of skills and a ladder of incomes eventually benefits everyone, rich country and poor country alike. I would say, and again, this may sound a little counterintuitive in this day and age, there's still a lot of legs left in the game of exporting. There's a lot of legs left in manufacturing exporting within global value chains. I'll just give you an illustration. The big story, really, of the last 15 years is the evolution of the Chinese economy. It's moving up the value curve. It's losing competitiveness in low-skill, low-wage work. It's becoming more sophisticated. And they're even developing technologies at the frontier. This is all pre-tariff wars. This has been happening over 15 years. In just 5 years, China shifted 25% of clothing manufacturing out of China into Southeast Asia, some of it into Nigeria, Ethiopia. It shifted 15% of shoe manufacturing out of China. So just imagine, if China were to shift just another 10% of manufacturing to sub-Saharan Africa in the next 5 years, not at all crazy, because if they could shift 25% of clothing, 15% of shoes in just 5 years previously, they could shift just another 10% into the sub-Saharan Africa. That will mean a doubling of the manufacturing workforce in sub-Saharan Africa and a more than doubling of manufacturing GDP in sub-Saharan Africa. Likewise for South Asia, somewhat less than sub-Saharan Africa, but a substantial boost. That's what it takes. And it's not because of conflict between nations. It's the natural evolution of a developing economy that's succeeding. And it starts shedding some parts of what it's doing to the benefit of other countries. They used to call it the flying geese pattern. I think the Chinese have another term for it, dragon something. What's it called? Someone had a term for it, but something to do with dragons. Geese was Japanese, dragons are Chinese.
No fire involved.
But that's a big story. Manufacturing has higher productivity growth, more of a skills ladder, and is still at the core of economic development. Secondly, agribusiness. I had a very light lunch just now. I had a packet of cashew nuts. I love cashew nuts. By the way, it's very healthy. Serotonins, everything.
They're from Côte d'Ivoire.
So exactly. So that's my point. That's my point. Chances are it's from Côte d'Ivoire, but Côte d'Ivoire exports the raw cashews. It exports it halfway across the world to be processed, and then it's again exported to one of the developed countries where it's repackaged and rebranded and made to look very good, with margins added all along the way. Very little of the price of that packet of cashews that I ate over lunch accrues to the producer in Côte d'Ivoire. And the World Bank is now working with Côte d'Ivoire to build up that processing capability and allow them to earn their fair share of what is theirs. It is honestly criminal how little has changed since independence in Africa, from the days when they were resource extracting, when it is a game of resource extraction. Very little has changed, very little downstream processing, but the number of jobs, the amount of profits, and the amount of reinvestment of profits in those economies that can come from agro-business is very substantial. Final point.
Quick one.
Regionalization has again escaped Africa.
Yeah.
It's a Southeast Asian specialization with ASEAN, with CPTPP, with RCEP. South Asia has been a little slow, and I know they've got some problems at their boundaries, but again has significant potential. We have the Africa Free Trade Zone, which has barely taken off. The cost of transporting goods within Africa is much higher than it is within East Asia. And that's a huge potential. Think of it as an opportunity, because with the scale that comes from a regional market, you can afford to invest in specialization. You can afford to invest in specialization that puts you on a learning curve that's very similar to what East Asia went through. So exploit the potential of regionalization, and exploit the potential of regionalization leading to links between regional blocks, between Africa and the EU, between Africa and ASEAN, between the CPTPP and the EU. These links between the blocks are again going to be about growing the pie, because it's lowering trade barriers, so that we can trade more freely with each other and we can exploit the maximum possibility to grow the global middle class.
I mean, what you're saying is sort of the antithesis of where the world feels like it's headed at this moment. Actually, to the point that you're making, do you think more interregional trade is likely a result of actually what the world economy is facing at this moment with the risks of fundamentally higher tariffs, at least based in the United States? And I apologize because I want to get back to some of these other young people questions, but just very quickly on that.
Well, I think that I said this at the press conference or the opener of this spring meetings, that I believe that lower tariffs are good for everybody. And in fact, the developed world tends to have lower tariffs than the developing world. So we need to figure that out. But then interregional trade and bilateral and regional trade is where it'll go. Look, for the last 10 years, if you look at the number of bilateral and regional trade deals being signed in the world, they are way in excess of what most people are paying attention to. All the acronyms that just now President Tharman was using, CPTPP, RCEP, these are all deals involving groups of nations in the last decade. And it has changed the way trade is working in those countries. So it's coming.
It brings us full circle back to the question, because the point ultimately is the uncertainties caused by a shrinking pie, or a pie that's not growing too quickly. If you can increase that interregional trade, you'll create the jobs that we're talking about.
May I add a little thing?
Super fast.
Super fast.
Like super fast.
I speak not so long. First of all, I think interregional is essential.
Yeah.
For example, my country has, I think, the biggest numbers of MOUs and FTAs with a lot of people, but in our region, there's very little interregional trade. And I think this is essential. But also, in the current context, everybody's looking at diversifying where they're going to, the buyers, the sellers, etc., because they feel they need to not be dependable on one country. They need to think on many other countries.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was very quick. Pressed. President Bachelet, the next question's for you, actually. And this time it was submitted earlier, and it's a video. Victoria from Mexico has a message.
Hello, President Bachelet. My name is Victoria Rodriguez Villarreal. I'm 21 years old, and I'm from Monterrey, Mexico. My question to you is about the Latin American region and how we can address that challenge of stimulating economic growth and ensure job stability. Informality is still holding back real growth in Latin America. What do you think governments can do to create more stable jobs, especially industry with low productivity?
Okay, so just to clarify, shrinking the informal sector across Latin America and I think raising productivity away from sort of the low productivity jobs, how?
Well, the first thing is true. In Latin America, in many countries, 70% of the jobs are in the formal sector, and of those, 3/4 are women and young people. So it's a real important thing. It's not only, I would say, holding back the growth, but also increasing inequality. And when we're always thinking on growing, we want that growth to benefit everyone. So what can governments do? First of all, invest in people. And that comes from education, from the early ages. I'm a fan of early childhood education and development, because I think that will provide them all the possibilities, all their own potential for the future. Second, we need to develop a lot of plans in terms of training, education, higher education, but also training on skills and abilities, so they can have, but those abilities on those education needs to be matched with today's and tomorrow's labor markets opportunities, because I've seen countries that have lots of tertiary education students, but they have no jobs afterwards because they didn't match both things. So that I think is very important, and to be sure, because we are running out of time. The second thing is how we support SMEs, because SMEs, they are in Latin America in particular, the ones who create more jobs. But they have so many obstacles to open new SMEs. So we need governments to help to facilitate the life of SMEs, to support them with looking at the laws, the regulation of laws, and for workers, and also for their own activities, to be easier for them to do what they do. And particularly it has to be in all those areas where they have low productivity, because we need to support them so they can, and they are the ones like agribusiness and others that can really make more, achieve more. And third, we need to strengthen social protection systems, because those social protection systems will permit, on one hand, that informal workers will be more interested in formalizing, in being part of the formal, because on the pandemic, we developed in in all Latin America, a lot of subsidies and support for people who have lost their jobs, but people who are in the informal sector, they couldn't get any of those. Yeah. So we need to ensure that they have access to some of these benefits, and we have to find also maybe some particular scheme for self-employment and others that make closer the formal and informal sector. Finally, fighting informality it's also an economic issue, because we will have more economic development when we have people more productive, working in more formal places with SMEs, etc. But also it's a matter of dignity, of respect and equality.
And stability, to your point as well, and being able to plan for the future.
Well, yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on. RJ, this is a question for you. Chris in the United States. And actually, we've touched upon a few of these sectors over the last hour or so. The bank has identified sectors that it believes have high potential for job creation. Can you help us understand why you're prioritizing these sectors?
Yeah, so I mean, look, this is all part of our Jobs Council work, and these two are the leaders of our Jobs Council, and they do have day jobs, and they're still willing to help us, for which I will be eternally grateful. The 5 sectors we've identified have one very key thing in common. They do not rely on the old model of only outsourcing OECD jobs to a developing country for growth. I think we have to move carefully past that model to go beyond it, to think what locally relevant jobs can we help to create. So the first sector being infrastructure, which Doug was speaking to as well, along with Dylan, all kinds, physical and digital, and Rania talked a little bit about it. This is all about making sure that schools, bridges, airports, digital, electricity, health, skilling is available. Because without that, nothing can grow, but with it, it's the ultimate enabler. That's the first one. The second one is agriculture as a business. President Tharman started talking about it, but Michelle has mentioned it, and I think we heard it earlier as well. There, the topic is smallholder farmers. If you connect them to cooperatives, if you give the chance to get access to better fertilizer, better seeds, better cropping techniques, better weather prediction, better markets for their produce, crop insurance, things of that type, you change their productivity. You no longer end up with young people in that family selling the plot of land and essentially ending up as urban poor, which happens in the emerging markets all the time. So that's the second part. The third is primary healthcare. Not just because you'll create better labor force, but because you create jobs for nurses, medical diagnostic technicians, for midwives, for PPE manufacturing, for pharma manufacturing. And so you'll create better health, but you'll also create jobs. The fourth is tourism, that Rania spoke to better than I would, which is the idea of the multiplier effect that tourism has. Among the best multipliers per dollar invested are the jobs created in tourism. And then the final one is manufacturing. And here President Tharman talked about the idea of how manufacturing can fit in, both for local but also regional consumption. And by this, I don't mean extraction. I mean local value-added jobs. So if you look at the emerging markets, they have lots of minerals and metals that we all need for energy transition. Don't just extract them and bring them elsewhere. Work on them there, give people there a chance to do things with their hands and their brains and get better value and earning. And then you will find the magic of all this comes together. That's the purpose of these 5. They're chosen with that idea. They need other things to work. Early childhood development, skilling, the involvement of women in the workforce. There's a series of things that need to happen, but that's the logic of these 5 sectors.
You can see where the jobs are created.
Absolutely.
Where people are
Absolutely.
effectively. Okay. President Tharman, next question for you. We have a very excitable young person from Mongolia for you.
Hello, President Tharman. My name is Narunjaya, and I'm from Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. I'm 22 years old. My question to you is about artificial intelligence, AI. There are 2 possible futures ahead of us. One, where advances in AI upend labor markets and lead us to a world without work. And another one, where AI acts as a complement to labor, helping people become more productive. So in your view, how will AI and advances in technology impact job creation? Thank you.
Well,
do you agree with the two scenarios?
yeah, well, just give me 20 seconds to check ChatGPT to get the answer.
I can do it for you while you speak.
If I'm not allowed to do that, I'll just say, the answer is, we don't know in advance whether the displacing effect of AI is going to be larger than the way it augments human skills and abilities. But how it works out will depend on what we do now, what we do in that whole stack of education and training, starting from the earliest years through a person's career, what we do about the use of AI. So I'd say particularly for the developing world, let's not get too caught up in the question of what's going to be the leading large language model, who's going to win at the frontier, which of those 6 or 7 firms is going to end up as a winner. That's an interesting game, a lot of money going into it, some overinflated stock prices that have recently corrected. But that's not the main game. The main game is, how do we use AI? Everything that was discussed in the last panel, what Ajay just spoke about. Small AI used to improve productivity in every sector has tremendous potential in the developing world. Soil health, precision agriculture, meaning precision irrigation, just the right amount of water at the right time, precision fertilization, the right type of fertilizer at the right time, tremendous boost to productivity. Because getting people out of the trap of low productivity agriculture is the way we get people jobs in all the sectors that Ajay was talking about. Higher value, higher skills, higher wages over time. But first get them out of that trap of low value agriculture. And the technologies now, a little counterintuitively, allow us to do it far better than we were previously able to.
It reminds me of when I asked you about this, Ajay, a year or so ago, and you said Mission 300, getting access to electricity for Africans, and then we can have the AI conversation when we've got the infrastructure layers in. There's so many component pieces of this. Anybody want a quick word on AI and the impact? Or we're going to wrap it up. Michelle?
I agree. We were just discussing yesterday this and how important could be not only the big data, but big AI, but also the small AI in so many other issues. But I think the big challenge is the lack of access in Africa and other parts of the world to AI, to cell phones, to so many. So in theory, it's fantastic, but how long it will take in some places, it will take much longer than in others. So it's really important to be how can we support those countries so they're really given those opportunities.
Love that. Ajay, final words?
About AI?
About everything. Wrap it up. You're going to put a bow on it.
All right, great. So a friend once said to me that poverty is both a state of being and a state of mind. What they meant was you have to have a job, you have to earn, but the dignity you get from a job is what really lifts you from poverty. We must understand that, internalize it, and care about jobs as the best North Star for this institution to make a difference for why it was created. And that is what I'm focused on. We cannot do it with our money alone. We cannot do it with the money of rich governments like Singapore or other middle and lower income countries, because there is not enough money in fiscal budgets to do so by yourself. We need the private sector. We need its ingenuity. We need its capital. We need its innovation. We need its people. We need its orientation for urgency. Doing this the right way is what we have to do. If we do it that way, everybody wins. Governments win, political leaders win, the private sector wins, the World Bank and MDBs win. Most importantly, young people win. Somebody tell me what the heck is wrong with that idea?
Nothing.
Okay, so let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, your panel. So we really hope that this has been an informative and engaging session for you. You can watch the replay, by the way, and other events at live.worldbank.org. Please continue sharing your comments online with the hashtag WBGmeetings. And now I just want to quickly invite all our panelists and speakers onto the stage for a group hug. Actually, it's a photo, but we'll do both. Thank you so much to you two.